Hello, my name is John Saeed, and today for assignment 3, I'm going to be participating in option 1 or the important childhood memories option. So introducing, where I first kind of began and the opportunities and the type of resources that I had at a young age. Until I turned 5 or 6 years old, I actually lived in the old part of Farmers Branch, Carrollton. Me and my family lived in a 2 bedroom, 2 bathroom house. And at that time, we didn't have the best resources available to us, but I personally had enough to, have a childhood, go to daycare, have everything that I needed. So I had all the proper resources. Now after that, we moved into Louisville. We moved into a middle to upper middle class neighborhood, and that's when I had more resources available to me because of a wealthier school system, and just everything like that. Another big resource I had was my family. I have 2 parents. I've always had 2 parents, and that's a major resource that I've always been able to have. It's so helpful. I also have an older sister who can help me out with academics, and then I also have a younger brother. While he isn't as much of a resource like academics, he's still a part of my family, and therefore I consider him a resource. You could also talk about things like mass media. I think a form of mass media could be social media. I wasn't really introduced to social media until I reached high school, and so therefore I don't think I was really affected by it. Um, when talking about other things like peers or school, um, I've always kind of been an introvert, so I did have my friends as a resource as well. However, I didn't really have many friends. I just had a small group of close friends, and that's kind of how I lived out my social life, and it affected how I went through school too. Um, I went to Killian Middle School, which is not necessarily zoned for the Colony High School, but I transferred into the Colony High School in order to participate in Collegiate Academy and graduate with my associate's degree, and so I would consider that a major resource and a major landmark in my identity as a student as well. I think something that's also kind of affected everything, whether it's family, resources, peers, or school, is my religion. I consider myself to be a Christian man. I wasn't always a Christian, however. About halfway through middle school, I found out what religion meant, and I decided to educate myself on it. And that's kind of when I started defining myself as a Christian. And I think that trying to live a lifestyle that's defined by what the moral values of Christianity say has affected everything, including a childhood. Growing up, I never really had that as a main focus, but it was always there, and it was an influence, I would say. When talking about music, I listen to all types of music, and I always have. I have a playlist for classical, hip hop, R&B, pop, 90s, 80s, and I think that influence comes from my mother because she does the same thing. And she has appreciation for all types and walks of music. And so I think that's also come to define me as a person, because of the vulnerability that an artist can have in a song, just giving me a perspective outside of my own. Finally, I think to talk about a culture/socialization concept, talking about how the looking glass self concept has affected me. I said that growing up, I never necessarily had a lot of friends, more just a group of close friends that I trusted and that I considered to be extremely valuable. And so, when talking about how others' perceptions, or even my perception, just any perception about who I was defined me, I would say that I believed it to be true. But in order for me to believe somebody else's perception of me to be true, I would have to trust them. And so I think that could also be a good thing, because if I trust them, they can give something or pour into me that I didn't see in myself. It could also be a bad thing because, they're not always right. I could see something in myself that they also don't see in me. And so when talking about a culture or socialization concept, I think that's one that's affected me greatly, in good and bad ways. Thank you.